Do you guys have like a jingle that plays?
Oh, I wish. I wish. Okay, I
And
see.
we're live.
Now. Cool. So, hello, y'all, and welcome back to another podcast hosted by Exercises Medicine at UCSD, where we are committed to raising awareness about exercise for health and well-being, along with promoting professional development in the diverse careers of sports medicine.
And just a little disclaimer before we start, we are not medical or fitness professionals, and the info we discuss today is just for entertainment purposes and as such is not to be misconstrued as medical advice. Catherine and I are professional development coordinators at Exercises Medicine, and we will be hosting today's informational interview.
And we are really, really happy to have Tina Nguyen, a UCSD alum and current physical therapist, to our podcast today. Thank you, Tina, for joining us. Can you please maybe introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little about your professional experience before we dive into the rest of the questions we have today?
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you guys. So yes, my name is Tina. I graduated from UCSD in 2014. And then I took a little bit of time off before applying to physical therapy school in 2017. At SDSU. I recently just graduated in May of 2020. So amid all of COVID and everything, still did it. And then took some time to study for the MPTE and then became a licensed PT in August. So then since then I started applying for jobs and just recently started my first big girl PT job here in LA at an outpatient orthopedic clinic.
Nice. So just to start off from there, from your experience at UCSD, what opportunities at UCSD did you take advantage of to progress your professional development?
Yeah, so I came across the organization Student Health Advocates, which you two said you've heard of before. So I joined SHA, I think the end of my first year at UCSD. I actually had no idea what the organization was about. I saw it in like a newsletter, like, oh, now accepting new members. And then I just kind of put myself out there like, hey, let's just try something different, something new. And so SHA, if you all don't know, is a peer health education organization. So we are trained in general health, sexual health, drugs, tobacco, and other, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. And so SHA hosts workshops, events, campaigns to educate the campus on those topics. So for all 3 years, I was in that club, and that actually really helps me with not just the health aspects, but also like the human connection and education aspect of medicine also. So I think that kind of gradually actually complemented my physical therapy school and learning later on too.
Yeah, I think our club president is actually part of SHA too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so for our viewers, like you heard it from our president and you heard it from Tina now. So if you want to join. It seems pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know what, I don't know like how things are working out with the club now though. I received an email recently saying that things are about to change with COVID and just, just kind of more logistical stuff. So, but you should definitely look into it.
Yeah, COVID has been changing a lot.
Yeah.
I know that you said that you just finished schooling, you said in May, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you went through schooling during the lockdown?
Actually, no. So my cohort, we were fortunate to actually have completed all of our didactics before COVID hit. So we finished our official schooling summer of 2019. Mm-hmm. And then we started our like full year of clinical rotations fall of 2019. And then we were supposed to end on May 2020 of our clinical rotations. Unfortunately, actually, a lot of our clinical rotations had to end early because of COVID. So yeah, I think I missed like 2 months of my whole last clinical rotations, which was unfortunate, but we actually were able to get all of our requirements according to CAPD, California Association of Physical Therapy Education. Like they require at least 30 weeks of clinical rotations. And I think a lot of us actually got 30 weeks. So we were cleared to graduate.
Oh, good. Also,
Yeah.
congratulations on that. I did the hands, the happy hands if you didn't see.
Oh,
I wanted to celebrate that. That's amazing.
clapping with no hands. Yeah. Yes.
And sorry. Oh, just curious. I know you mentioned that you're orthopedic PT right now, but while you were in PT school, was that always your motive to become an orthopedic PT, or did you gravitate towards like inpatient or pediatrics or any other setting? Or
Actually, that's a really good question. Actually, so before PT school, I worked as front desk and PT aide at a sports medicine orthopedic clinic for a little over 2 years. And I actually, from that experience, I was like, I don't think I'd want to work in ortho. And so going into school, I was just kind of like, I'll be open to whatever and experience whatever. I told my clinical education director that I'm interested in hand therapy, in neuro, in peds, and basically everything. And yeah, because sometimes you just don't know what you're interested in until you get there. Mm-hmm. And so I actually realized that I had a passion for neuro PT. And so, I mean, after school, I applied to a lot of neuro PT jobs, but unfortunately with COVID, there's not a lot of positions. And I think places aren't so inclined to hire, new grad mm-hmm. for neuro PT. So, so now I'm at an ortho clinic that is actually, we're heavily based in neuro re-education as well. So I think it's important to remember that although no matter what setting you're going to be working in, the whole body is wired based on the nervous system. So there's always an opportunity to apply what you learn in school with any setting that you are in.
Oh, I see. So would you say as like a new guy, orthopedic is like the most common setting, like, or?
I think so. Yeah, just because the opportunities are more available, mm-hmm. and those clinics are more likely to hire new grads.
Oh, I see.
So I think if you know the specialty that you want to work in, especially if it's very specialized, like neuro, peds, or working with patients with amputations or anything like that, it's definitely good to get a head start and join organizations and foundations that focus on those populations.
I see.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were saying before about your PT schooling, you mentioned that you had like didactic year, you finished that before clinical rotations. Mm-hmm. Could you maybe briefly describe like the didactic year versus the year of clinical rotation for our viewers? Because I know sometimes like the vocab is a little hard to understand.
Well, yeah, okay. So I think it depends a lot on which school that you're at. Some are more spread out, some are what is that word I'm looking for? Accelerated. So so some programs could be finished in 2 years, some are spread out over 4. At SDSU particularly, we had 3 years. So the first 2 years are the didactic, meaning like the classroom, the schoolwork, and then the last year is your full clinical rotations. So for us, the first year was basically all the foundational classes. So foundations of PT, how to run through an evaluation, how to use the goniometer, measure strength, how to ask questions first during a subjective, and clinical anatomy. So we did dissections, which was really awesome. And what else did we learn? Heavily we learned a lot of evidence-based practice. So how to read research papers and analyze them. And then through the summer too, we learned halfway through the summer. We had classes halfway through the summer on differential diagnoses. And then at the end of the first summer, we had our first 6-week rotation. So it's kind of like, okay, you got your basics, and then now they throw you in for 6 weeks just to kind of help you get that clinical application of everything you learn. So then that kind of refreshed a lot of us, because it's like, oh, you're in school for so long, and then it's very easy to forget why you're doing everything. So that 6th week was a good refresher for us to see the bigger picture of what we're learning. And then after that, we went back for another full year of school. So so that second year was just kind of more of just another tier up of basically everything else that we learned. It was more like biomechanics, a lot more neuro, and then for the evidence-based practice, now it's not just reading and analyzing studies, it's how we actually apply those studies to clinical application, like how we would use it in the clinic, and write our own case studies. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else we learned during that second year, but basically, yeah, after that second year, it's like a full wrap up. We take a full comprehensive exam of everything that we learned from the beginning. And then, yeah, it's supposed to prepare us for the MPTE, basically. And then we get a little bit of a break before we head on to our last year of clinical rotations, which could be either 8 weeks or 16 weeks. And you could be sent, anywhere from Alaska to Florida. But luckily, our clinical education director was very good about learning about our interests and trying to get us into placements where we want to be. So I hope that answered your question comprehensively.
Yeah, no, you answered that and more. Did you find that you enjoyed clinical rotations way more, because you were actually in the field, or did you really like, like the book study and all that?
Oh no, I like the clinical application way more, yeah, because yeah, sometimes when you learn and memorize things, it's very easy to forget. But when you are able to apply it and then see how different patients respond to, like different patients can respond to the same treatment. So it helps it helps with your critical thinking, basically, which I think is a much better way to learn.
It's true, hands-on, right?
Yeah, and making mistakes too is, I think, the biggest lesson in clinical rotations. I feel like a lot of students feel like when they go into clinical rotations, they have to like prove themselves, like, oh, I learned this, I know all this information. But my biggest advice going into clinical rotations is forget what you know and just learn as much as you can from your CI, and just have an open mind and understand that just because you learned that a certain intervention was had high clinical evidence for it doesn't mean that it's going to work for every single patient. So yeah, just go in with an open mind and know nothing, basically, which is counterintuitive.
And just curious, what were your thoughts on inpatient while you're on clinical rotations? Because that's something personally I'm kind of interested in. Yeah. But what did you think of inpatient?
Initially, I didn't want to go into inpatient just because I would consider myself like a very highly emotional person. So sometimes I feel like it's hard for me to detach my feelings and emotions from the situation in order to care for the patient. Or like I overcare, basically, and then so that could be emotionally draining for you if you don't learn how to compartmentalize. But I actually found that I really, really enjoyed inpatient. you get an opportunity not just to connect with the patient, but with their family members. You get to work collaboratively with other staff members, like the nursing staff, OT, speech, doctors. So I feel like as a PT, your role in inpatient goes way beyond just getting the patient back to their functional goals. You get to help them with their full health and recovery.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Just just a for food of thought. And also just curious, what are the pros and cons of being a PT, would you say?
Oh, okay. That's a big question.
Yeah, it's a very broad question.
Okay, let's go with the cons first. I'm pretty sure everyone would agree. Most PTs would agree with me. It's the documentation. With our population, I mean our profession rather, it's very highly regulated by the law, by insurance companies. So we basically have to be so thorough with our documentation to basically like cover our butts, you know? So that could be very, very time consuming. So definitely if you can practice being good at that early on, because otherwise you're going to be working so much like outside of your job too. What other cons are there? I mean, I wouldn't say this is necessarily a con, but a struggle is that sometimes you can't help everyone, and that could feel like a burden a lot of the times, but yeah, sometimes you're not the right person to help someone, and it's just something that we have to learn to accept and to understand that although we can't help them personally, we can offer resources for them to find help. Other cons of being a PT, can't think of any other ones right now, but I think a pro for me personally is that I get to connect with people and just to make them feel good about taking care of their own health, basically. I just love seeing like the spark in people's eyes and like, whoa, like I was able to do this now, and I couldn't have done that like years ago. And yeah, just seeing the spark in their eyes again, that when they are able to achieve a goal that they've always wanted to work towards. Yeah, that, and just in collaborating with other physical therapists and other medical professionals as well.
Do you find that you, or speaking to the cons, do you find that you refer your patients out a lot, or does that not usually happen?
I haven't had to do that very much, but with, let's say, so something I've been noticing a lot with my chronic pain patients is there's like a big psychosocial factor to their pain. So like depression and stress. So, yeah, with things like that, it's like it's a difficult conversation to have, but it's definitely an important aspect to address to make sure that they progress in physical therapy too, because you can have someone work out day in and day out, but if you're not addressing really like what's going on inside, then you're not making sustainable change and real change for them. So yeah, with that, I would have to refer out. As far as other types of referrals, I haven't had to make other types of referrals in terms of like neurological issues or any other red flags like cancer or anything else that I feel is the cause of their pain. Luckily, I haven't had to do that.
Yeah. And on the topic of like, your daily work, mind maybe describing what you do in a day? I know day by day it differs, but like your average day.
Yeah, so yeah, day by day it's very different. And actually, I feel like my situation is probably very unconventional compared to other new grads in orthopedic settings. So when I first started at my clinic, so we do something very different at my clinic. We use Redcord and Neurax therapy. which is like a suspension type of therapy where we have you offloaded with bungees and cords. Have you heard of that before?
I've never heard of that used in therapy, but I've seen that like in exercise classes.
Oh,
It
really?
seems cool. Yeah, like people got attached to bungee things and they could like jump and fly around. But
Oh, yeah.
application.
Yeah, I guess it could be similar, except we don't have them fly and jump yet. But so basically that type of suspension therapy we don't learn in school. So when I joined that team, I spent like a whole month training, and I'm still training constantly because there's so many different exercises to learn and different progressions on it. But yeah, so I joined the team on the contingency I would be trained in all of that, and then start to build my caseload with patients. But with COVID, unfortunately, a lot of patients dropped out. We're seeing like lower volume in patients. So my caseload, it would be like 4 patients a day sometimes. And we're at my clinic, we're actually implementing a new kind of like functional diagnostic tool. We're using like a 3D movement scan that was developed in Sweden. So we just started implementing that like a couple months ago. And so I'm helping my team develop that program, basically promote it in the US, working on marketing, working on revamping the website. So I feel like as a PT at that clinic, I'm not only working as a clinician, but I'm kind of working as like on the business and admin side as well. So I kind of get to see the full scope of how to run a PT business, basically.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I feel like you got to put a lot of stuff on your resume after this then. That side, the business side. And...
Yeah. It's definitely hard sometimes to kind of switch between the different hats, but it keeps things dynamic and exciting for sure.
And does PT like school prepare you for the business aspect kind of like PT?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So one of the classes that we took right before going into our final year of clinical rotations was a class called PT Business and Administration, I think. And so one of the projects of that for that class was we had to team up with our classmates and then create like a mock, like a fake business, fake PT business. It could be like anything you want. It could be like concierge. It could be a ortho clinic, peds clinic. And so, yeah, so for that project, we learned basically financially what it takes to open a business, legally what it takes to open a business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we kind of got a little dive into what's required. And so, yeah, a few of my classmates actually started their own like private cash-based business after school too. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you ever think you might like try to create your own practice, after that class and after seeing your friends succeed?
Yeah, I think if I do, it wouldn't be like a brick and mortar clinic. It would be more of like a concierge service where I go to my patient's house or they come to mine or meet somewhere, like maybe something more mobile instead of a brick and mortar. But I actually, that's funny that you brought that up because actually after I passed the MPTE, like job prospects in San Diego were so sparse, and I applied to so many places, and it took so long to hear back that I decided like, okay, I need to research other ways I can, start working basically.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit more research into what it would take to work on your own and start your cash-based business. But yeah, just as a new grad, I wasn't too confident starting out on that, but at least I kind of researched and I know a little bit more now so that later on, if I wanted to, I could start that up.
Yeah, that'd be so exciting.
Yeah.
I always like read like these posts about like the number one complaint about PT school is how they don't prepare you for the business aspect, but it's like good that they're like trying to prepare PT students now for that aspect. And also, just another question back to like the cons. I've been reading like a lot of like posts online and stuff about how one major con about PT school is the student debt, how it's becoming way out of hand, especially for PT. Do you have anything to say about that, or how were you able to manage the debt, in your opinion?
Oh, well, if you find out, please let me know. I'm just kidding. Well, for debt, basically, so I would recommend a few things. Try to apply to public, like in-state schools. Basically, like I created like a spreadsheet with pros and cons of each school, and definitely the tuition was listed on there. So yeah, consider in-state schools, consider like public schools over private schools. For me, luckily, I was able to live at home in San Diego, so I didn't have to pay for housing or anything like that. I would look into like personal finance and financial independence like early on. I made the mistake of just focusing on school. Well, it's good to focus on school, but I made the mistake of not considering like finances during school to make sure that once I'm out of school, I'm at a more comfortable place and I don't feel like I have to take on any job that comes my way, and I can be more selective on that. But I wouldn't say I'm the expert on financial independence or anything like that, but I would recommend looking into that early on, learning how to budget. Something I did in schools, I never bought a single textbook. Actually, my classmates were able to find like PDF versions of the textbooks, and libraries have it too. So just finding little ways to cut down on finances here and there and budget. Two of my classmates actually started a podcast called 2FI Physios, so 2 financially independent physios, and they offer tips and tricks on how to manage your personal finances during school and handle debt and all that too.
I'm kind of
check that out. You should.
Yeah. But do you think like the debt like is becoming way out of hand, or do you think it's becoming more manageable, in your opinion?
I think it's definitely very, very, very expensive, especially at the private schools. But I mean, that's a hard question to answer. I think at state schools where I am, it's pretty manageable, and if you're proactive about looking for scholarships and grants, then yeah, I think in a way it could be manageable.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because I think like that's like the number one drawback of PT school that I've been like personally researching about and reading is like the financial aspect of how it's so like the debt is coming way out of hand, or some things like that.
How high is it now?
Yeah. So I've been trying to find ways to like minimize that aspect, like trying to like look for like schools I can commute to, or like things like that, just to like be smarter for like the future. But yeah, thanks for answering that. I know it's like a hard question to answer, but thank you.
That's smart.
Huh?
That's smart of you to consider that early.
Yeah, it's like good to like plan like way earlier than like graduate and like have this huge debt. And yeah, so I've been thinking about that in the back of my mind. And yeah. And I know you mentioned earlier that you took some time between undergrad and starting your DPT schooling. So can you give us a little bit more insight on what you did during your gap years, how many gap years you took, and yeah, just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, okay, so it was 2014 when I graduated, and I actually thought I wanted to apply to physician assistant school and to become a PA. But then when I started like applying to the programs, I just realized I just didn't really feel the passion for it. It's a great profession, but I just didn't feel like it was my calling per se. So I decided to take some time off and just basically look for any job related to health, wellness, or sciences. And I kind of noticed a theme with my life is to just put myself out there and try things I don't know or I'm not very experienced in. So I started working for a corporate wellness company. And so basically I was at that job, I was doing what I did with student health advocates, but on a corporate scale. So we worked with different companies, human resources departments to build wellness programs to basically increase like retention, reduce insurance rates, and just overall like build company morale. So I did that for, I think, 2 years. And then during that time, I also became a yoga instructor. And then I realized I wanted to be PET. So then I applied to work as a PT aide, which transitioned into working front desk at that same clinic. So for me, it was just kind of like just keep dipping my toe in as many things as I can, and then that led me to PT basically. Yeah.
So were those 3 years, would you say, like in those 3 years, did you make that decision or that conscious decision to go to a DPT program, or were you like sort of already considering it in undergrad and you just like made the decision into reality in those 3 years?
No, actually, it's funny because I never considered that as a career. I had PT like when I was a teenager and everything, so I was exposed to physical therapists, but I wasn't like particularly impressed actually with the job. And then it wasn't until I started yoga that I kind of felt like the personal healing and growth, like not just through my mind, through my body, but through mind and emotional healing as well through movement. So I realized I want to be able to help other people discover that within themselves too through movement. And so then, yeah, and just knowing that I've always wanted to work in the medical field, I just thought it's kind of a natural transition. But yeah, so that just goes hand in hand with like being a pure health educator since UCSD too. So like the health education and connection piece married with the movement piece led me to PT. Yeah.
And I know you mentioned yoga. Do you find that, I guess, the concepts, maybe just about movement or health that you learned from yoga, do you think that enriches like your interactions that you have with your clients, or are yoga and your work kind of just two separate things?
Oh no, yeah, I think it definitely complements it really well. Especially I feel just because with a lot of patients, they kind of just move through life and they're not really consciously aware and of how they're moving. So when I work with patients, I get to pull in the mindfulness aspect of yoga, and basically help them just to feel more empowered through their movement, and like they have control and self-efficacy of their life, not just letting their body control them, but being able to build that connection with their mind and body. And yeah, just a lot of breath work through yoga is very beneficial in PT as well, especially with reducing stress and helping patients deal with the psychosocial aspect of pain as well.
You said reducing stress. Daniel, maybe we should.
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe one day.
And I know you mentioned how you were planning on applying to PA school, but you eventually didn't. What about PA did you personally find like not attractive, or I know this is like deviating a little bit from the PT aspect, but I've just been curious because I'm a little bit interested in PA also. But yeah, just curious, what for you personally, what did you not like about PA?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's not something. It's something that I don't like. Just based on my experience and interactions with PAs that I've met, it just seems like a touch and go type of job where you would only see the patients for
like a couple minutes.
Yeah, like 5-10 minutes tops, and then be like, okay, this medication might help you. Try this and that, and maybe this is probably not how all PT settings or PA settings are. I'm sure like maybe there's specialty settings where they are able to interact and work with patients a lot more. But yeah, one of the things that I really enjoy or that appealed to me about PT was that you get consistent interactions with patients and watch them progress and grow, which was what I enjoyed about yoga for myself. You know, you get to watch that progression and growth and evolution. So it's not necessarily like, oh, PA wasn't like was bad or I didn't like it. It was just that I wanted something more.
Definitely. I think that's the most appealing aspect for PT also for me, just seeing the growth in like patients. And I intern at a pediatric clinic right now and just seeing how like the little kids are able to like walk a little bit every day. It's like so like inspiring to me. So that's personally something that I really like about PT also. And
the transformation is huge.
Yeah, it's like so inspiring to see. And as a PT, were there any aspects or any setbacks actually in becoming a PT, or even now, like, are there any moments where you're like taken aback by being a PT, or like just during your career in general, like in your journey in becoming a PT, were there any setbacks or
You mean like personal struggles or?
Oh, that's too, like just like in general, like your professional career, or like just like in your road in becoming a PT. Like, were there any like struggles in like school or just
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's different from person to person, but for me personally, I deal with a lot of self-doubt. So even like I think I was telling you guys before, applying to PT school felt a little bit traumatic for me. So I kind of like blocked all of that out when I was done. But yeah, just writing all the essays and just feeling like you have to like prove yourself to someone. And that was just very, with my self-doubt, that was like hard to deal with. And even throughout school too, like just being hard on myself for not doing well on tests or just not being able to memorize things or get certain concepts right away. But a big thing that I learned through school was that it is okay to make mistakes. Like, you don't have to be perfect, and just constantly ask questions. So I think that would be the biggest setback for me. And I still feel it now, even after school. But it really helps to keep open communication with your colleagues, your mentors, and just seek as much help as you can. Because even when you're done with school, it's a constant learning process. So, yeah.
Beyond like the self-doubt, even though self-doubt is plenty of like, you know, a setback, were there setbacks that related to like maybe getting your prerequisites done or finding a place to get your prerequisites done, trying your GRE and like finding that your score was good enough,
okay
like
good question. So I applied to PT school like 3 years after graduating from undergrad. So it's been a while since I was in that like study focused mindset. So studying for the GRE was a little bit of a struggle for me because it's been so long since, you know, I studied geometry, trigonometry, algebra. Like, that part was so hard. So I took the exam, and then I got like the exact score required for PT schools.
Oh, phew.
Yeah, but then, the overachiever in me was like, no, I can't get the average score. I need like more, because I felt like, oh, my GPA is not good. My essays aren't good enough. So I just wanted to make sure everything was like in tip-top condition. So I decided to take the test again. And then I got the exact same score as the first time. So that was a little bit of a setback effort-wise and like financially and everything. But luckily it all turned out okay. What other examples of setbacks? I think I thought of something else when you were mentioning. What were the other examples that you brought up?
I think I was just talking about like getting the classes.
Prerequisites.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. The prerequisites. Yeah. So I believe for some schools, isn't there like a 5-year expiration date for your classes?
Mhm.
Yeah, there is. That really stresses me out.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you don't have to be stressed out. You're still within that range, right?
I know, but still, just like, what if like 5 years from now, like, yeah, something happens, or I don't know.
What if we get denied from PT school for 4 years? And
Yeah, that's exactly my fear.
No, you won't. But yeah, you won't. But yeah, I think so. It was 3 years for me. So then I kind of had that anxiety, like, okay, what if I don't get in this time and then the next round? And then I was like missing one prereq, the lower division biology lab. So I didn't take that at UCSD. My major at UCSD was neuroscience and physiology, which didn't have an under division or lower division biology requirement. So I took that at a community college, which was actually a good thing because I was able, since the class sizes were smaller, I was able to connect and meet with my professor more often and on a personal level. And she actually wrote my letter of recommendation for PT school. So I think that was another setback too, because at UCSD, the class sizes were so big that it's hard for, to talk with professors and have them remember who you are. And I emailed actually a lot of my professors from UCSD and I didn't hear back to get a letter of rec. So that was a huge setback and gave me a lot of anxiety. But I was able to get that from my biology teacher at community college. So it worked out.
Oh, that's great. Maybe we should do that. I should take more classes at community colleges.
Yeah, I took anatomy at community college, and like I got really connected with my professors, so it's definitely
There you
yeah.
go. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a university professor.
And like also just prerequisites, it's so stressful because like some classes UCSD doesn't offer, like for like anatomy, we don't offer anatomy. We don't offer like physiology lab. Like
Yeah.
so you have to take all that community college. It's like very yeah. It's very, and also I think like all of us experience like setbacks in like trying to become like a PT or whatever, because even right now studying for this is like a setback for me. I really hate studying for the GRE and having to like remember like geometry tricks or stuff like that. But yeah, but hopefully everything will work out in the end.
Yeah. Are you paying for GRE classes right now? Or like
Oh, I'm just trying to self-study, but I don't know if that's like the route to go, because I don't really want to pay for like classes like that, like GRE classes. So I'm trying to do it on my own, but
okay,
yeah, we'll see how that goes. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah. And just curious, why did you choose SDSU in the end, or how did you end up choosing SDSU out of all your possible PT schools?
Yeah, so I'm from San Diego and my whole family is in San Diego. So yeah, that was a major part of my decision. I wanted to stay at home to save money, and it's a state school, so tuition is lower, and I just really liked the program and the people and the staff. So those were my main decisions. Yeah, but the big one was that it's home.
If my home was San Diego, oh man, would I want to stay at home? That was great.
Yeah.
I had one more question. It was, and it was totally, I think it was off script too, but
No
um,
worries.
what I wanted to ask about was, like, as you moved through PT school and, you learn more about the body, about how movement works, did you find that that education influenced the way you exercise? I know I talked to one PT, I think last year, and she said that throughout PT school, she actually learned that, and this could be wrong or this could be just like, one tidbit of a fact, but she said that if you do ab workouts where you like move your back, like crunches, that's not as safe as perhaps doing like a dead bug where your back is straight. Like I know it's just a small
Mhm.
example, but it's like something like that. Did you learn from PT school and now you like implement in your life?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, huge thing that we learn in PT school is like interregional dependence. I think it's what I hope I'm saying it right. Interregional dependence, meaning the like when you move a certain body part, it's all connected to something else. So, like people with knee pain, you don't necessarily only want to focus on working on their knee. You want to work on their hip strength, their lumbopelvic stability, because movement in one joint is influenced by something else upstream or downstream. So, personally, for me, with my exercise, I started taking up running again, and I've been having like sciatic or not sciatic pain, sacroiliac joint pain for a long time, and so I realized that okay, my hip strength is poor, so I've been working a lot on like my hip strength and also working on ankle plantar flexion strength too, and then like shoulder strength even in running too. Um, so yeah, I guess in that sense that changed a little bit the way that I worked out. And yeah, it's funny because a lot of the things I learned in school I didn't know as an athlete in high school. So I've always wanted to go back to my high school and like help my track team and cross country team be like, oh no, you guys should do this exercise or that exercise to improve your performance and reduce your injuries. Yeah.
I'm sure they'd benefit from that,
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and also just curious, we always ask this question to like a health professional that we're talking to, but what skills, sets or characteristics do you think a potential PT would want to have?
Potential skills or characteristics.
Mhm.
Um, So, yeah, you know what? That's a good question because I was asked that at one of my interviews for PT school.
Oh, really?
I think a big thing for me is just being a good listener and being good at making people feel heard and connected because sometimes that's literally all someone needs and
Mm,
will really help motivate them throughout their PT journey as well. So that and just always being open to learning new skills too. Like don't be rigid in the way you do things or the way that you learn certain things. Always ask questions and be skeptical of things that you learn.
mm.
Yeah.
Catherine, you're muted.
So sorry. That's good advice. I kind of want to store that in my brain, especially
Oh.
if you heard that for like an interview.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so just before we close out this episode, because I think we're getting close to time, is there any advice you could give students maybe listening in from Exercises Medicine
Mhm.
who are looking into, pursuing physical therapy?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I was talking with Daniel about this too, but if you can, try to take a gap year and immerse yourself into like almost full-time PT as either a volunteer or as an aide because you really want to get yourself immersed in that career before you apply because kind of like we talked about it's a huge financial commitment, time commitment, so make sure that it's something you really want or that you are passionate about before you apply. And just take the time to explore all different types of specialties too, so that you know what you're getting into and that you know different settings in which PTs work, and you get a better idea of kind of the scope of the practice. Yeah, and just don't be afraid to dip your toes into new things. And it's totally okay to when you do that, to find out that, okay, maybe PT wasn't my calling. So just don't let yourself live in this box of, this is always what I've wanted to do, and I will do it, and this is my only path. It's totally okay to change your mind. Yeah, just try as many new things as you can.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I've heard the immersion advice from a lot of people, to find out like if you want to do something or if you don't want to do something. I think experience is, like, as
Yeah, and also if you're and also if you're good at it too, right? Because I've when I worked as an aide for 2 years, I was also the volunteer coordinator. So I got to see a lot of volunteers come through who were interested in becoming a PT. And a lot of them were smart. A lot of them were knowledgeable and interested in exercise and fitness. But sometimes they miss that key piece of interpersonal skills. So just understanding the full, like all the requirements that it takes to become a good PT, and that gap year I think will definitely help you develop that if that's something you're not quite comfortable with yet.
So I feel like before this, I've been kind of scared of a gap year, but now you're kind of selling me on it. So
Yeah, and I was telling Daniel too that it helps when you're in school to have these experiences in the back of your mind, like, oh, we did this with, or that PT did this specific exercise with that patient for this reason, and you just have more experiences to apply what you learn versus just like, oh, memorizing things without really a clear picture.
that's
Yeah.
really good advice. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So hopefully all of you listeners took note of that too. As we finish up, we'd really like to say a big, big thank you to Dr. Tina Nguyen. Thank you so much, Tina,
Thank
for
you.
spending time with EIM today and sharing your knowledge about your professional path. You definitely taught us a lot. I know Daniel's nodding his head too. So for more updates, you can find Exercises Medicine at UCSD on Facebook or Instagram. And to view our past podcasts, you can look at YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music. So thank you so much for listening and spending time with Tina and us, and have a good rest of your week.